So my name is Emma O'Reilly. I'm from Ireland, although I am currently based in the United Kingdom, which is it's very interesting to be an Irish person in the UK. I think that Lithuania and Ireland have a shared history of constantly being occupied by other places and being taken over by other countries. So to go and live in one of the countries that tried to take your country over and many other countries is strange. It's a strange situation to be in, but here we are. So I'll just tell you a little bit about me so that you have some context for the instruction I'm giving you today. I make a sort of theatrical indie folk pop. That's the type of music that I make, lots of rock influences, and I think a lot of folk approaches to the way that I write my lyrics and perform my vocals. I was raised in County Galway in Ireland, that's in the west of Ireland, and I studied music with English literature at Trinity College, Dublin. Now, that degree that I did was a very weird experience, guys, because it was a theoretical degree. So it was a degree in Western classical music. So I learned a lot about like Schenkerian analysis and, using solfege, do, re, mi, fa, so, and that kind of thing. A lot about Western classical music, but all theory. We didn't have any practical performance modules or anything like that. So I learned a ton about what I was doing, but actually not a ton about how to do that, how to manage my body in relation to it being an instrument and other instruments as well. It just wasn't the focus of the degree. So I learned an awful lot about music theory during my time there, which I still use to this day. It was a really useful experience, but it was a bit weird. The next thing to say about me on the bullet points, I'm on the third bullet point now, if you're following along. I'm a 100% independent artist. And as such, I have a very diverse skill set. So I've done a lot of editing for people for PhDs and masters and dissertations and things. I have studied a lot about social media and how that works. I teach music. I teach a little bit of piano, bit of guitar, bit of voice. I arrange music for different instruments. I conduct. I have quite a bit of experience doing choral direction. So I've got a lot of strings to my bow, I like to think. I'm self-managed. I'm self-funded. I'm heavily involved in every single area of my music, management, production, writing, scheduling, all of it. I'm cis-het and I'm she, her, hers. So if at any point I'm referring to one of our guests today and I misgender you, please just correct me. I have no problem with being a better person, so that's fine. I thought I should take a little bit of time to show you one or two clips of me making music. In different contexts, because I just want to show you sort of like the range of experience that I have. So I'll do this one first. This is a song called Icarus by an artist called Jason Webley, and this is me performing all the vocal parts in that song.
I wake up every morning to the sound of motors roaring. They are drowning out the voices in my head. While I am sleeping, I can hear the angels speaking, but I can't recall a single thing they said. I see their lips move clearly, I feel their presence near me, but each word they try to tell me just slips through the cracks. I push, I strain, I wrestle with my brain, and then a voice from somewhere whispers to relax. I'll say a word for sickness, she is my favorite mistress. Yes, she knows my body like no other can. My flesh and spirit keep colliding when her fingers are inside me. Oh my God, lady, I'm your man. Fever, flu, malaria, come near me, do not spare me. I just long to spend another night under attack. I retch, I shake, I cry until I break, and then I feel something release and I relax.
Okay, you get the idea of that one. So I love me a little bit of kind of dramatic musical theater energy in a song. This is an original song, this one I'm about to play. Different, as you'll hear, it's a The voice is using similar technique, but it is a different style. Again, it's more rock.
Just cannot compare to you. So beautiful. I just can't do the things you do. So wonderful. And I wish the skies don't fall when I come to my senses and realize that everything I'm doing is a waste. The breath in my lungs, the songs I have sung, the voice I have been given just to speak my own truth.
So I'm going to skip ahead a little here.
So personal. The roof of this great house is surely falling down. The roof of this great house is surely falling down. Knowledge to come, feel in my bones, tear me apart, reconfigure me, and then if I look in your eyes, I don't see the truth. For a person like me, then I have got to start again. Feel the earth, can you feel it? Feel the earth, can you feel it? Feel the earth, can you feel the earth? Feel the earth, can you feel it? Feel the earth, can you feel it? Feel the earth, can you feel it? Feel the earth, can you feel the earth? Feel the earth shake.
So a little less musical theatre and a little more rock there. This next one is a piece called Mate Saula, which is in Latvian, and it talks about this kind of idea of mother-son, waking up in the morning and churning butter. It's really incredible imagery. And you'll hear that this is a choral context, and the sound, the intention of the sound, very, very different. So it's very classical in approach, this piece of music. You can hear the space that's in the sound. It's got that classical energy. And if you want to check out this recording of this piece, if you look up the Irish Youth Chamber Choir on Spotify, I'll type that into the chat for you. It's well worth looking at. It's a really dynamic, really interesting piece of music, and those little textures that you hear at the start are improvised. So there's a lot of improvisation in that piece of music. The working in choral context has gotten me into other performing zones as well. There's a band called Elbow that some of you might be familiar with, and the choir who performed this piece of music here also performed with Elbow at a festival called Electric Picnic in Ireland. And here we are. I think he starts with us here. It's a lovely song, actually, really nice. So you can hear us in the background there. So we got that gig because you see this EP here that we've done, the one with the Latvian piece on it. if you can sing music that's that complex and you have that level of technique, you're a good bet for a festival who are looking for a choir, because they know that if you we didn't rehearse that with them before we got on stage. We just got on stage and did it because they knew, well, these people can handle material that's quite a bit more complex than that. And we know that their voices are going to be fine. So we were able to just get up on stage, do that. Any Daft Punk fans in the house? Yeah. So I got to, one of the coolest things I got to do was play a set with an orchestra who they played the entirety of Daft Punk's Discovery album from start to finish on Sunday of the same festival. This was actually the year before. And I was in the choir for this, and we got to just sing the samples, basically. So you get the idea. So the reason I want to show you this difference between the choral work and the kind of more pop styles that I've done is because I think it helps me to articulate who you're listening to, first of all, for kind of this workshop. And then second of all, it kind of informs one of my philosophies as someone who does a bit of vocal coaching. I think in the classical world of singing, they talk all the time about vocal coaches. They talk about the larynx. They talk about the way the voice is structured and formed. They talk about breathing from the diaphragm. The second you move into popular modes of music making, the coach, the vocal coach, the vocal teacher disappears. They're still there. I know for a fact, Eddie Vedder, Beyonce, Pink, all of these huge names have vocal coaches. They work with vocal coaches. But within the culture of music making for independent artists and songwriters, the type of which we see a lot of at this festival in particular, it's almost looked down on to go for vocal coaching. Our perception of it is sometimes that you only go to a vocal coach if you can't sing, which is horrible and damaging. Now, I might be wrong. Your culture might be different with this. It might be better about this. I have a feeling that it is. But in the cultures that I've experienced, we have a very, there's this kind of encouraging of like an ego approach to the voice and a prideful approach to the voice where I don't need vocal coaching because I can sing high, or I don't need vocal coaching because I can sing loud. And my experience has been that I went through, my first EP came out in 2009, and I didn't get proper vocal coaching until 2012. And what I found in the time before was that everything I did was, I knew I had a good voice, but it wasn't reliable. So I'd be playing a certain song and I would wonder if I could hit a certain note. And I'd be stressing about that note when I was preparing because I didn't have any technique or any help for me to figure out how my instrument could manage those particular things. And then when I started working with my kind of first proper vocal coach is a lady called Judith Mock. She's a Dutch soprano. And oh, you gotta love the Dutch. They're just straight up about things. And she was wonderful. And she opened my voice up to me. And I didn't know it could be that reliable and that good. And it really just made me fall in love with the art of singing and the art of what we can do for each other when we encourage each other to constantly be in a state of, you know, educating ourselves and learning about the voice and what it can do. So I feel very lucky that I fell into those classical modes of singing while I was in university, because through that, I got to have the stigma around vocal coaching removed from me, because I saw my classical friends be very proud and very vocal about their work with their vocal coaches. And I thought, yeah, I like that. Let's be about our voices, and let's make sure that we have experts to check in. So as a singer, I think it's a really good idea for you to, if you've experienced the stigma of vocal coach equals crappy singer, to remind yourself that the biggest companies in the world and the most successful business people in the world always get consultants in to weigh in on their businesses, to weigh in on what they're doing, to talk about how they can get even better. That's what your vocal coach is for you. So you may already be a professional singer, and I can guarantee you that even after you work with a vocal coach, you'll find your voice starts to move out of this being a problem, and then this becomes a problem. And having a coach to sit in every now and then and listen in on what you're doing, they can just help you make a tweak here, a tweak there, and suddenly a set list you've been struggling with opens up to you because you've managed to get those 2 problem songs sorted. Do you know what I mean? So we look at vocal coaches as members of our team. You know, they're there for our well-being and our vocal support. And if your vocal well-being is good, that's good for you, and it's good for your longevity as a singer. And we all want to be singing for a very long time. So that's pretty important. So today, with a view to getting stuck into this a little bit, and you know, I can't be there with you, so this is probably one of the best ways to approach the subject. We're going to look at 3 different kind of areas of the voice today. We're going to start off with the lungs, the diaphragm, and the rib cage. That's our breathing powerhouse. We're going to look at the larynx and the pharynx. It's creating sound and then resonating that sound. And we're going to look at the points of balance in the body. So I've actually moved the order around a little bit since I did these up. I'm going to talk to you about points of balance second, but we will get to all of these points. And then we'll have a bit of time at the end for lots of questions from you guys. Okay. So let's see. Let's just get stuck into it. Let's talk about the lungs and the rib cage. The lungs. So we're going to get into very specific vocal biology at the right now. And I've got lots of images and stuff. So if we use different words for different things, or different words are not familiar to you, don't worry. I'm more interested in you getting connected to the sensation of the work we're doing today, how it feels in your body, rather than I have to remember what this muscle is called. So if you just let it be the first time you hear this information, you can always replay this later and you can always come back to it, okay? So the lungs and the rib cage. I just want you to watch, you'll see a quick little image on this video of the arrows showing the direction of the breath into the body. That's what I want you to watch for. So if we look at this video, the respiratory system. So here's our bald friend here to demonstrate for us. So arrows going in, arrows coming out, okay? So that's all I wanted to show you there from that. Although if you wish to go back through these slides later and look at that in more detail, you can. We saw the arrows move in through this kind of thing into here. We saw these big spongy organs getting bigger. And then when they got smaller, we saw the arrow travel back out. And of course, as you've already copped, that is the pathway of the breath into the body. So we'll just look at that again. Okay. And the function of this in our bodies is for gas exchange. It's so our bodies can take in oxygen, spread it into the blood system so that oxygen travels around our body. And then our blood cells also swap out carbon dioxide for oxygen. It's like this, it's kind of like the lungs are like this marketplace where we're swapping oxygen for carbon dioxide all the time. When your lungs are full up of carbon dioxide and that swap has been made, you're ready to exhale and things come out. So when we breathe in, everything fills up. We breathe out, everything gets smaller and comes back out again. So to talk quickly about the equipment and to give things their proper name, let's just describe that little path that the breath takes again. So air travels in through the mouth or nose, so in through here or in through here, and into the throat, so into this space. Okay, just kind of here. From there, it travels into the windpipe or the trachea, and then into the lungs. So if you look at the image on screen, air is coming into here, into the throat, travels down into the trachea, The trachea then branches out into two kind of bits of the tree. They're the bronchi. They divide again and become the bronchus, and they divide again and become the bronchioles. And it's inside the bronchioles that we have that marketplace exchange that we talked about. The lungs, you can see here, this little white layer there, that's just like a little protective layer around the lungs. It's called the pleural sac. Lovely fancy name. And as you might have guessed, so I'm facing the wrong way, but my heart is here. No heart on this side. So the lung on this side is slightly smaller than the lung on this side. Okay, that's just for your knowledge and your information. I think it's important when we talk about the voice to always honor what the equipment we use to sing was designed to do. And this is why when we yawn, it feels really nice. A yawn is getting that extra bit of oxygen into the body to top it up. So as singers, this is the source of everything, because the first function, the reason our vocal cords came into existence and the reason we evolved to have the equipment that allows us to speak and to sing is to stop water and food from getting into our lungs. That's what we used to speak with was designed to do. It was designed to protect the lungs. So speech and singing is a secondary function. It's not even what this equipment was designed to do, which is, I think, so humbling and so cool. So breathing is our source. You can sort of make sound when you breathe, and you can kind of make sound this way. But primarily when we speak, we're sending air up through, and it's that air that carries our voices. So this equipment here that we're looking at, that's where everything is coming from. If we don't have this, we don't have anything else. This is the foundational aspect of our singing, okay? There are 12 ribs in the rib cage. If we get stuck into the rib cage now, you'll see a lovely image of the rib cage here. There's 12. They are numbered in terms of how doctors would talk about them, and they go from 1 to 12. So if you look at the image that we have here, you can see the top one is small, and then it gets wider towards the middle. And you'll notice if you look right at the very bottom of the rib cage, you'll see that there's 2 ribs at the back that don't connect up to the main bit. They're called the floating ribs, okay? So each rib attaches to the breastbone here, and this is where we're going to begin our first exercise today. I want everybody to sit up well. And so you're getting ready to sing. And you're going to just use your fingers. Now, we're not going to be pushing ourselves or beating ourselves or anything like that. You're just very gently going to use your fingers to feel where things sit. So you can see there that there's this thing that almost looks like a little bug's body in the middle of the ribs there. That is our sternum. That is our breastbone. So if everyone can take their fingers, I want you to just feel with your fingers for that breastbone. Just take a second. You'll find that there's a point where it kind of stops, and you can just walk your way back up again. It's kind of strange to actually really acknowledge our body in this way, isn't it? It can be quite uncomfortable for a lot of people. So this is our sternum, okay? And you can see on the image there that I've provided for you of the rib cage, some of the bits are in blue and some of them are kind of that bone color that we would expect. The blue bits are what's called cartilage. Cartilage is not bone. The kind of yellowy bony bits that you're looking at, they are bone. Cartilage ain't bone. Cartilage is like bone in that it's very tough, but cartilage is spongy. It can actually move. So if you get your fingers and you move down the rib cage again, move down the sternum bone again, okay, you'll get to this little point here where you can feel that bottom of the rib cage as you see it in the image. So I want you to find there. You might need to kind of tuck in a little bit gently in order to be able to do that. But I want everybody to get their hands into that position here so I can demonstrate to you how the cartilage is working. Okay. If you need to put the phone down, if you need to do anything like that, that's fine. But but get yourself into this position here. So your starting point is the sternum. You're walking down till you feel that divide happen, and you just kind of want to set your fingers on either side of that divide, okay? So when you're here, you're going to take in a really deep breath. Take in another one. So you'll feel that movement happening. So you can feel that those blue bits don't stay stuck when you breathe. They move. They move. So if you're only just finding that position now, let's do that one more time. Don't be shy. It's weird. We can acknowledge it's weird, but it's important. So taking in a deep breath again. And out. If you're struggling to feel it, close your eyes. So close your eyes and do this. So you can feel that there's a little bit of this action going on in that bottom piece of cartilage, okay? I'm going to go back to the slide now and back to the third bullet point on that slide. So where do the ribs attach to the spine? You'll see at the back of the image, at the back of the rib cage there, that there's a gap left. But actually, our spine attaches via a series of different muscles to the spine, and it's not shown there. So the implications of that, though, for our breathing as singers is really interesting, because it also means that the rib cage, let's imagine this is the spine and this is the rib cage here. So this is your spine, this is the rib cage at the back. So you're looking at someone's back right now. When you breathe, this doesn't stay stuck. It's muscle, and muscle can move. So when you breathe in, it comes out. So our breathing is this 360-degree experience all the way around our bodies. And we'll do a breath mapping exercise shortly to kind of feel that more. But for the moment, I just want you to see through this image and through this information that the rib cage doesn't stay like this when you breathe. You don't go, it goes like this. It almost mimics your heart as your heart beats. It's quite wonderful. We're really cool. I mean, if this doesn't make you think that your body is the coolest thing that ever existed, your body is amazing. Look at what your body can do. Look at what you've evolved to do. It's quite incredible. So just a couple of notes while we're on the breath. Smoking is insanely bad for you, and it places your lungs at a huge amount of risk. Now, apart from the huge risk of cancer and illnesses from smoking and vaping, I mean, we don't even know what diseases we're going to get from vaping yet. So vaping is, you're rolling the dice if you're vaping still. Smoking seriously decreases your lung capacity. So it has an immediate effect on your instrument. It makes your instrument less powerful and smaller, because your instrument now has less capacity to fuel your voice. This means longer phrases where you have to be able to have breath to spare won't be as accessible to you. It means that power in certain parts of your range won't be as accessible to you. So, I mean, if the best you can do is cut back, even just start there, because this is literally working against your instrument. And if you are getting into a state of vocal practice where you're working on your voice more and more, it would be a real shame for you not to see your progress because of a habit that you have. So I would really strongly recommend ditching smoking or vaping if you possibly can. And the next point here, good posture. Good posture is so key for your ribs to move correctly, okay? So incorporating something like yoga or Pilates into your routine is a really good idea to cultivate your posture. So in society, this is how capitalism has taught us to sit, right? We all sit like this now. We're like Igor in the Frankenstein movie. Yes, master, how can I help you? Okay, we're all crunched over like this. What is this doing to my rib cage? Well, if it's hunched over on top of itself like that, it can't really expand as much as it needs to. And it's also because the muscles on my shoulders are doing this, it puts all sorts of pressure on the air moving into the back as well. So if we can learn to reset, we're going to be in a much better position. Dance classes are another great place where you're going to, if you're moving your body a lot, your body will align itself. It will center itself into good posture. I know you've got a huge theatrical tradition in Lithuania. Any classes you can take with as kind of serious drama practitioners, they will probably do a lot of movement. And I've observed over years how if you say to a singer, relax, just relax there, have a few minutes, they'll do this. Right? Or they'll do this. Or they'll do something weird that puts their body out of alignment. If you tell an actor to relax, they will center. They will drop into the body. Keep an eye out for that. It's very interesting. So whatever practices are going to help you get good posture as something that you do by default, or you can catch yourself and return your posture to a better place, do it. There's plenty of free yoga on the internet. Pilates is amazing because Pilates is all about strengthening the muscles that hold up our posture. And a good acting class as well will often have a movement-based section at the start of the rehearsal to get your body aligned. Because of course the voice is very important in acting as well, to be able to have your text carry across a space. So before we do our breath mapping, I want to talk to you about the diaphragm. So just a quick check-in with you guys. Who here has heard the term diaphragm before, or the equivalent in Lithuanian? Yeah, just one. If you're not on camera and you just want to type yes or no into the chat. So you have, yeah, okay, yes. Yes. Yes, okay, okay. So many of us have some sense of what the diaphragm is. Have you been told by vocal coaches and people in different music contexts that you've worked with to sing from the diaphragm? Sing with support, sometimes they'll say as well. Yeah. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Can I ask you, so now is a time to be honest. Do you think, or do you feel that you fully understand what they're asking you to do when they say that to you? Because personally, I know for many, many years, I didn't really. I thought I kind of knew what it was, but then like 6 years. Yeah. Mikolas, I might be saying your name incorrectly, but definitely there's, for a lot of singers, the journey to understanding the diaphragm is really a long, long one. Helena says, we're going to check now. Very good. Okay, so we have some concept of what the diaphragm is. We know it's important for our singing, and we know that it's a great place to bring your focus as a singer. Let's learn a little bit more about how it works from the vantage point of the biology of the body. So this blew my mind, okay? Don't worry about the words there for a second. Look at the image. Look how high up into the rib cage the diaphragm sits. I always thought, so I'm using these fingers to show the diaphragm. I always thought it was kind of down here somewhere. So what we would call that in the area of body mapping, which is an effort to understand how our body works. I had the diaphragm mapped in my head as being like down here somewhere, but actually it's right up here. It's right up high into the body. So it's kind of weird to see it there, just sitting on up. And it goes to show you how small the lungs get when we breathe out. So that's the diaphragm at rest in that image. And the diaphragm is a parachute-shaped muscle. I've also heard described as an umbrella-like muscle that sits up and into the rib cage. So another thing to know, and I think this is really important because you'll be given exercises and things throughout your career to help your breathing that involve the diaphragm. So it's good to know why and where we might feel sensations in the body around the diaphragm. So the diaphragm itself doesn't have any sensory receptors. What do I mean while I say that? Well, a sensory receptor is a cell that sends information about pressure or touch from somewhere in your body to your brain. So if I do this, it's setting off a chain of sensory receptors that tell my brain, oh, someone is touching you here, okay? Your diaphragm does not have sensory receptors. So if you are feeling your diaphragm, you're not feeling your diaphragm. You're feeling other things around your diaphragm that do have sensory receptors. Your skin, some of the muscles in the abdomen, all the guts and stuff that are down there, they've got some level of sensory receptors in them. So you're not going to feel the diaphragm's movement. You will monitor your diaphragm's movement by monitoring other parts of your body, like your rib cage, like your abdomen, and how that moves. So we measure the movement of the diaphragm in a few different ways, but we just have to be aware moving forward. We're not going to feel the diaphragm itself. We're not going to get signals from the diaphragm itself. We'll get our information from bits around the diaphragm, okay? Now, I had another thing that I had that totally blew my mind, and you can tell me if this blows your mind a little bit as well, is I had no idea where the diaphragm actually attached itself to the rest of my body. Does anyone like feel that as well? That they know that kind of where the diaphragm is, but they don't really know or haven't previously known where it attaches. If you know, you can pop it into the chat, that's okay. Okay, there seems to be silence, so I'm going to assume that this is relatively new information for all of us. Okay, that's good news, that's great. So your diaphragm attaches to your body on just under the rib cage. So you know earlier when we kind of felt for here? If you take your fingers now and you just walk them along the bottom of the rib cage, you are walking your fingers along about maybe, I think about a centimeter below or like very close to where your diaphragm is stuck on. So it sticks in under here, all the way around. And then when we get to the back, it changes tactic. It attaches to the spine. So you can see there in the image that we have, you can see that the diaphragm is attaching at the bottom of the rib cage. You can see right at the very back of the image, you can see it attaches a little bit to those floating ribs that sit at the back. And you can see that it attaches to the spine. So now you know where your diaphragm is actually moving from. This is fantastic information for you to have, because when you breathe in now, you're going to have a much more refined sense of how much movement you should actually experience in the diaphragm. Okay. So I'm going to move quickly to the bullet points with this image so that we can just make sure we've covered everything. So the diaphragm is an umbrella-shaped or parachute-shaped muscle that is key to our breathing. We knew that already. Good job, us. When air enters the lungs, the diaphragm moves down to make room for a full inhalation. When we exhale, it comes back up. It attaches to the ribs at the front on the bones, and it attaches to what we call the lumbar spine. The lumbar just means it's the lower part of your spine. It attaches to the lumbar spine at the back, okay? And we know that there are no sensory receptors there, so we're not going to feel the diaphragm directly. We'll feel it from the way that it moves different pieces of equipment in our thorax, in this abdomen part of the body, okay? I was going to say something else about the diaphragm. Let me see, what was I going to say? Yeah, so a little bit of a diagram here for you as well. This is just to reiterate what I was saying there. So the first image that we see here on the left shows us what happens when we breathe in. When we breathe in, the chest expands. And as you can see, there's an arrow just down by where that rough indication of the diaphragm is. You can see that that arrow is pointing down and into the body. When we're breathing out, the rib cage comes back in and down, and the diaphragm comes back up. So, with a view to understanding this, I want us to map and model the movement of the diaphragm for ourselves in a way that we can see and understand, okay? So everybody, this is something that we can all do now as well. I'm just gonna come back so you can see what I'm doing. I want you to take your fingers like this and make a little diaphragm for yourself. Yep, so like this. Now, when we breathe in, the diaphragm moves down. When we breathe out, it comes up. So this is in and out. In, out. Okay? Now, let's go a step further and let's actually map that movement close to where it actually happens. So we're going to get our fingers again. We're going to find the sternum, that breastbone, and you're going to find the point where the sternum kind of stops. And you see that little spongy bit there and where the ribs are here. That's where we're going to make our little tent. So make that little tent for yourself there. And now, when you take a deep breath in, I want you to move the diaphragm down. So breathe in. Hold it. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Let's do that a couple more times together. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Okay. The reason that it's so important for us as singers to do this physical movement is because we don't have X-ray scanners in our houses. We don't have something where we can like get someone to X-ray film our bodies so that we can see how our bodies move. But we do have our hands. And the more we can understand about how our physicality is actually performing, or how our body's actually performing, the more we can sing from that place of knowledge. So if, for example, I always think that my diaphragm is down here instead of up here where it actually is, I'm going to push too hard on the diaphragm because I'm going to think in my brain that I should be feeling the pressure here. And if you push too hard on your diaphragm, so if you go to the diaphragm to the point that it's like here, you can damage yourself. You can get hernias. Your diaphragm can slip out of place. So this biological knowledge will stop us from doing things that might hurt our instruments. So for example, this mapping example that we've been doing just now, so I'm finding my bones again, the bottom of the rib cage. I'm making my little tent. When I breathe in, I'm not going to force my diaphragm to try and do this. Do you see what I mean? It might do a little bit of that, but I know now not to really push on it because I can see that that's actually not the degree to which it moves naturally, okay? So these mapping exercises that we're doing, I think sometimes some people perceive them as being maybe childish, but actually we're not like trombone players and we're not violin players. We can't see what's happening in our instrument. We can only try to map it with the physicality that we can see. So that's really useful. If you are meditating, if you are, waiting for someone, and you don't want to be just scrolling on Instagram, take a second, take 2 seconds, put your phone in your pocket and just, someone will think you're just about to crack your knuckles. It's fine. They're not going to know what you're doing. But you're reinforcing to your body and showing your body, this is how I move. This is how the movement works within my body, okay? So just a quick little video for you guys to show you what's happening when you breathe. Now, this is an anatomy video. They're not always exactly correct with how far or how deep a certain motion happens, but I find them really useful to look at so that you can have a visual frame of reference for how the body's moving. So check this out. So that's our in-breath, out-breath. In-breath, out-breath. So you can see that although the rib cage is mapped all in white here, we kind of can remember where the blue bits are, where the cartilage is. And you can see how that cartilage is doing that thing where it's a bit spongier than the rest of the body. Do you see that? So I just think it's so helpful to actually see images of how our body's working. That's what's happening inside when we sing. Now, in my previous life as a singer, I didn't think that the degree of movement in the diaphragm looked anything like that. I thought it was way lower. And that was causing all sorts of issues. So it's super interesting to see how expansive this equipment is, how it moves, okay? I think that that's a great little video. I really, really like it. So a few notes on this. In our singing, we move the ribs and diaphragm a lot more intentionally than we do when we're at rest, okay? Singing is, in some ways, it's unnatural, which is weird because for us as singers, it's the most natural thing in the world to want to sing. But when you think of how we manage our breath, you know, we're going to delay how much breath we give over a long period of time. That's not natural. It's maybe not our default. So just to acknowledge that this act of singing in the way that we use the diaphragm and the rib cage is an extended, more athletic way of using this equipment than we're used to. So this is why we do our breathing exercises. This is why we go to vocal coaches. Vocal coaches are like our personal trainers. Some people go to the gym and get a personal trainer so they can lift heavier weights. We go to vocal coaches so that we can figure out how to strengthen the muscles of our singing. And it's a good idea to view singing as an athletic activity, because then your focus shifts off sounding like Christina Aguilera to strengthening my muscles. Do you see what I mean? And that's going to be a healthier place for your voice. So second bullet point there, this is good to note. So most of us take shallow breaths in our day-to-day breathing and we don't fully fill up our lungs. This is a learned behavior. You didn't do that when you were born. When you were born, you took full breaths and you learned as an adult, at the same time as they were slowly teaching you to do this, they taught you to take small breaths. And you watched the adults in your life do this. So in your journey to become an adult, you have adopted that behavior as well for most of us. That's okay. That's normal. We're tribal as humans. We want to fit in. But for us, in our singing, we employ something called whole chest breathing, where we take advantage of the full range of the rib cage's movement and the full range of the diaphragm's movement. The fancy name for this kind of breathing is intercostal diaphragmatic breathing. You know, someone says, what were you doing today? You're like, oh, I was just doing some intercostal diaphragmatic breathing, actually. I'm very intelligent. The reason it's called that kind of breathing is that the intercostals are the muscles of the ribs. And the intercostal muscles, you've got two different sets of intercostal muscles. You don't have to remember this, by the way. This is just for anyone who already knows some of this stuff. So you've got the internal intercostal muscles and you've got the external intercostal muscles. And they work, do you know the way, like I have a set of muscles that lift my arm and I have a different set of muscles that lower my arm? Your rib cage has the same. It has muscles that open up the rib cage and muscles that help the rib cage to contract. So I think it's your external intercostal muscles engage when you go to breathe in and they bring the rib cage upwards and outwards. And your internal intercostal muscles engage to bring the rib cage in and down again. That's why it's called intercostal diaphragmatic breathing, because those muscles are working and the diaphragm's breathing. So that's a really biology, muscle-y way of describing what we're doing. But we can just call it whole chest breathing because it feels like we're using the whole chest and all of the muscles available to us, okay? Next point, tidal breathing is how we breathe when we're asleep. It's very shallow and it's kind of, it's relatively quick. We breathe in a little, we breathe out a little, we breathe in a little, we breathe out a little. When we sing, so this is where knowing the biology is really useful again. I mean, it's never not useful, but when we sing, we fill up. These are the ribs, by the way, that I'm modeling. We fill up and you keep it there. So if I sing, I dreamed a dream in times gone by, when hope was high and life worth living. I dreamed that love would never die. So what I'm trying to do is, instead of letting it all go on the first bit of the thing I need to sing, I want my breath to flow evenly over my musical phrase. So instead of, I dreamed a dream in days gone by, you don't blow all your air on the first part of the phrase. You've got so much more to say. So when we breathe in as singers, we aim to hold the rib cage at that really open point for as long as we can. The diaphragm matches this activity. So when we breathe in, I dreamed a dream in times gone by, when hope was high and life worth living. Instead of, let me get this. I dreamed a dream in times gone by, and then you've no breath left for the rest. So when we inhale, we want to keep the diaphragm extended at that point of openness and release very slowly. What this does for us is it stops our air from gushing out in one little bit, okay? Because if the air runs out in one little bit, by the time you get to the end of your sentence, you're going to start doing things like dropping words. And I personally, this is my personal thing, but as a singer, I don't see the point in singing lyrics if you're not going to give each lyric its moment to come across. So we extend and hold here so that we have enough breath to go the whole distance of the phrase, not just the start. I think sometimes psychologically, we resist this. I think the reason is we want to feel like we've started off our musical sentence with a punch. You know, we want to feel like we're doing something. But actually, that's not how, that doesn't kind of square with how we communicate as people. So in the coming days, I want you to pay attention to yourself when you're in conversations with people. You will not ever run out of breath when you're speaking. You might pause and take a breath while you're going, or thinking about something, but you won't run out of breath. And the reason is that your breathing apparatus is super linked to your brain, and your brain knows how long the sentence you're about to say is and takes in exactly the correct amount of air that you need to say the sentence. So when we are preparing a piece of music, and this goes for theatre as well, this is something I swiped from a theatre practitioner called Patsy Rodenberg. The breath is linked to the thought. They are linked together. And in our singing, it's the same. So when, is it Fatine? When she sings that piece in Les Miserables, I dreamed a dream in times gone by. She's not thinking about the rest of the song as she says that. If you're an actor and you're singing that, you stay with what her brain is doing. You know, when we're speaking, we're not thinking 6 sentences ahead most of the time. So you need to drop into each individual thought and give it its correct amount of breath. So when she sings that, she says, you know, I dreamed about something once. But when I had that dream, times were better. And, you know, I thought that love was this endless thing and that, you know, God was this forgiving, powerful thing. And I guess at that time in my life, I was young and I didn't have any fears. So do you see how she spends time in each thought? We need to do that with our breath when we prepare a piece of music. We need to train our bodies to extend for the length of time it takes for us to really process that thought. And what this does for our audiences is magical. It will change you from being, yeah, that was a lovely performance of that song, into, I couldn't take my eyes off that person. Because I think that as humans, breath is very instinctive for us. And you can see, you'll see this in your conversations in the next few days, you will. You can tell when someone's about to finish their point. Why? It's not just in the words they're saying. You are watching their breath. You are watching for them to take a next inhale. And if they don't take a next inhale as though they're filling up to say another big sentence, you know that that's your cue to say your part in the conversation. I swear to God, it's how we work as humans. So when we hack into this thing of marrying our breath to our thinking and to the image of the song, that's how we will captivate audiences, because they will watch for our breathing as though we are having a conversation with them. Okay? The last point I want to make on this one is we need to be mindful not to do too much pushing out of the diaphragm. So has anybody here done the book exercise for your breathing? Where you lie down on the floor and you put a book here? Has anyone done that? Elena, you have? Or Elena, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, I'm sorry. So this exercise is a classic one that vocal coaches do. They get you to lie down on the floor and they give you a book. So imagine I'm lying down on the floor right now and this is my book, okay? They'll get you to breathe in and push the book up, and then you breathe out for a certain count. So let's say it's 5 for me. I'll push the book up. Book drops, up again. Right? So that is a way of getting your body acquainted and strengthening the diaphragm muscle, making it strong. Now, you have to be careful if you decide to do that exercise, guys, because if you are doing that exercise and you don't have the correct image of how your diaphragm is moving, you may push your diaphragm down too far. So if you're doing your book exercise, I have really benefited from that exercise. But as I was progressing on in my vocal journey, I thought, oh, I need to go harder on it. I need to go harder on it. And I was starting to experience like weird sensations in my back of like things moving around that should probably not be moving around. This was before I understood about this movement here. So just be mindful of how your diaphragm is designed to move. Yes, you can feel a really good sense of a workout in the muscles of the rib cage and the diaphragm when you do this book exercise, but be mindful with it. Feeling intense sensation or feeling like, oh wow, that's actually quite athletic. I'm really I'm getting out of breath, or I'm really finding that as being a muscular workout. That's okay. But if it heads into pain, if you feel your body jerking, if you feel things shifting in your body, you'll want to transfer out of doing the book exercise and into something that I like to call, I think it's the Pharynx exercise. Yeah, that's it there. It might be misspelled. Please forgive me if it's misspelled. But what we do when we do the Pharynx exercise is we breathe in, hold, and then release for a count. So, or something similar like that. So if you are working with a vocal coach and they are getting you to do the book exercise, do it. Bear in mind how the physiology works, and if you are experiencing any difficulties or pain with it, don't do it. Go back to your vocal coach and express to them what you're feeling. Vocal coaches, remember folks, don't have an x-ray to see what's happening in your body either. They only have you and your communication. So most vocal coaches, if you go back to them and say, I was doing this, but then I was experiencing like a weird jerking here, they'll probably go, oh, okay, let's look at that again. Or maybe let's try a different exercise. You know, a vocal coach wants your voice to succeed. So always communicate back to them about how you're feeling those exercises in your body, especially with the book exercise, okay? Give them a chance. Give them a chance to help you. Because I don't think that people who are giving you the book exercise to do are people we should be accusing of malpractice, you know, because it'll cause me to overextend my diaphragm. It's not the case, but it just shows the responsibility that you have in that partnership. You need to go in and communicate about what you're feeling, okay? Right, let's go on. We're going to talk now about the spine and points of balance. I'm assuming that we're all okay. In general, we're ready. We're ready for the spine. Are you ready? The last time I was in Vilnius, Elton John was about to roll into town and do a concert. And I was like, I wish I could stay here and watch Elton John. So the spine, let's get stuck into it. This is your spine. Isn't she lovely? Yes, she is. How many of you have been told to stand up straight in your singing? Yeah. Yeah. How many of you have been told to imagine a string pulling you up? Never had that one? Yup. Yeah. So this is the one where, you know, imagine a string is pulling you up from a height. So those are things to be careful of as well, because neither of those things get you into close contact with how your spine actually works. Is the spine designed to be straight? What do you think? No. Okay, so we have one person confidently saying no. That I feel like that means everyone else is like, tell me more. Vertical, yes, exactly, precisely. Let me tell you quickly about what the spine is designed to do within your body. See this thing you have here that you sometimes wish you didn't have because it's driving you crazy? This is heavy, okay? This is really heavy. Do you know how much this weighs? This weighs the same amount as one of those big turkeys you see people take home for Christmas. This is really heavy. You've got a brain in there, you've got a skull, you've got organs, you've got eyes, you've got muscles in the neck. The spine is designed to carry the weight of your head correctly. Okay, so if you look at that diagram there, you can see from the diagram of the spine at the side that it naturally has a curve. The little red bit that's highlighted there is the cervical spine. That's from here to about here. That's your neck. The kind of light green bit is the thoracic spine. That's for your thorax. That's where your rib cage is basically. The really bright green is the lumbar spine. That's your lower back. And then the blue ones at the bottom there are from about here are the sacrum area. That's a series of fused bones. And then at the very bottom you have the coccyx. I never really know how to say that properly, but that. So your spine is in separate regions for a reason, okay? If I was going to try and turn to face the same way as the diagram, but I don't know if it'll map correctly. So I'll just talk to you a bit about the cervical spine. So you can see that the cervical spine naturally curves a little bit this way, okay? And then the spine naturally curves back. That's because when you think about the weight of your ribs and rib cage and lungs, that's like a counterbalance. So I don't know if any of you have done kettlebells before. You know when you get the kettlebells and you swing them out? You'll find your body leans back a little bit. It leans back a little bit so that you can maintain balance. So that's why this part of our spine curves back, because our rib cage is attached from it, and that's pretty heavy. So this curves into the body so that the weight of the head gets transferred into about where the shoulders are. Then the shoulders, from there, the spine curves back so that the weight of the rib cage and lungs can sit over your hips. And then the lumbar spine, so from about here, this comes back into the center of the body, okay? And you'll have seen, like you've all seen pictures of skeletons and stuff and anatomical skeletons in your classrooms when you were in school. You can see how the bones up here are small. They get bigger as they go down. And then when you get to the lumbar spine, they're like that big. They're really big because they're carrying a lot more weight, okay? So if we get into our Igor position like this, where we're typing all day long, yes, master, I will type all day long. That's completely not what our spine was designed to do for us, because we want the weight of the head over the shoulders. And if we can do that, then the weight of the head gets transferred into this part of the spine. And then that will get transferred into the lumbar spine, which is where our big, thick bones are. So we want the head to be balancing over the hips. Okay? Is that making sense so far? This is why it is sometimes unhelpful when somebody says stand up straight. So you'll watch people do things. If you are ever in a classroom with kids and you say stand up straight, just watch what their bodies do. Watch them pull their bodies out of balance. Some people will do this. So now I'm flattening this part of the curve of my spine, and now my weight is kind of all coming forward a bit like that. Some people will kind of go much further back to try and stand up straight, or they'll bring their chin up to try and be straight. So straight is not a helpful term for the spine. Some people, when you tell them to stand up straight, they will actually balance over the spine, but that's not everybody. And I don't think that the language is accurate enough to speak to everyone. The string idea, while it's intended to be helpful, it can cause people to do things like lift the rib cage up a bit too much, which means that hinders the breath in your back, or it can get you lifting your chin up. Now, sometimes what it can get people to do, the helpful thing that it can get some people to do, is it'll help them to actually tuck their chin in instead of doing this. So it can actually help their cervical spine to come back into alignment sometimes. But it can cause people to do all sorts of funny things as well, that whole string up through the head idea. So we just want to be mindful. I'm not saying don't use terms like straighten up. I'm not saying don't use terms like the string over the head. What I am saying is they might not cause the same results in every person's body, because most people have never mapped out their body before. They don't know what their spine is for. They've never thought about why the spine actually needs to be in a curve. And they don't know what it feels like to sit in balance because they sit like this all day. So they don't have a frame of reference physically for what you're asking them to do. This, again, is why I recommend things like yoga, Pilates, exercise of many kinds, acting classes that have movement involved, dance. Because to do a lot of the things that they need you to do in these, you have to learn how to balance into the body. The body has to come back to that natural learning. So actors do tend to have that in their training. Musicians, we don't tend to get that in our training as much. But I think that knowing more about the spine certainly always makes me feel really motivated to stay on top of good practice. Let's just go through a few small little points here. So the spine consists of 33 vertebrae. The vertebrae are the little chunks that sit down along the spine. 24 of those are separate, and you can see which ones they are. They're the ones in the cervical spine, the one that's highlighted in red. In the thoracic spine, that's that light green. In the lumbar spine, that's the really bright green. And you've got 9 at the bottom that are fused together in the sacrum area, and you can see that they're pictured in blue. I think if you're a singer, you should know how many bones are in your spine. I think you should, because if you're rolling up through the spine as a warm-up exercise, like I love doing this in the middle of a rehearsal or something, if you flop over your legs and just let your head go and then just roll up through the spine, it's really useful for you to try and count. Can I actually count all 24 moving parts of my spine? Can I try and stack them on top of each other and see what that might feel like? It's a good game to play. It'll get you to slow down and pay attention to the sensations of your body, which is where it's at for us as singers. So like we discussed there, the spine is broken up into 3 sections. The cervical spine, that's your neck, starting between your ears. That's another really useful thing to know, by the way, folks. Your spine starts between your ears and in the middle of your head. So it doesn't start like at the edge of your head. If you think your spine starts here, you're going to hang your head like this. But it starts in the middle of the body, right in between the ears. So if you took a drill in through your ears, you'd hit the spine. Okay, so that's where your head sits over your body. And that's where the cervical spine begins. The thoracic spine is your upper to mid back, and it curves back to make room for your rib cage. And then your lumbar spine, that's your lower back. That's where the kind of real heavy hitters are, okay? Did I have another point? No, I've just got a link there to that. So the vertebrae, let's just look quickly about and see how these little bits that sit on our back are actually formed. So does everybody know what their spinal cord is? No? You can say no, it's okay. I mean, like, I would have different words for it than you guys anyway, so. Okay, when I'm talking about the spinal cord, I'm talking about, you remember I talked about like nerve endings and stuff? I'm talking about a big passageway of nerves and stuff that heads from your head down into your back. So if you look at that image of a vertebra on the right, see the big circle in the middle? That's where all of those nerves sit. So the spine, I mean, I just think this is so amazing. The spine has developed and evolved over time to literally have bones around the structure to keep it safe. This is why if you have like a slipped disc, have you heard of someone where their vertebrae, one of them is kind of out of alignment? This is why that's so freaking painful and so debilitating for people, because like, instead of having this nice journey down through the body, these nerves are now like being wrenched out of place. So your spinal cord is the thing that carries all the signals from your brain to your body, in other words. It runs down the center of your spine through the vertebrae. So that's the big hole in the middle on the side there. And if you look at the image below that, you'll see that those dark blue bits, that's where the nerves travel out into the rest of your body. So for example, I've got the spinal cord will travel from my brain down through my cervical spine and around here, this point in my mid-back, those blue bits are going to start branching out into the nerve endings that go into my arms and into my shoulders and into my back and into my chest. So it's a really important part of the body. This is another reason why it's so useful to do things that are going to bring your body into alignment, because literally you're helping the flow of information from your brain to the rest of your body. I mean, why would we not want to do that? Yeah. Just one more thing to say about this image here. You can see the vertebrae at the top. See the big like knobble bit at the back? That's the back of the body. And if you've ever tried to give someone a massage, you can try it yourself now if you want. You can feel those little bumps. You can actually feel them. If you've ever hugged a really skinny dog or a greyhound, you can feel those little things there as well. That's a piece of bone to protect this spinal column. And incidentally, if you're giving someone a massage, you shouldn't be pressing in on that. It's not a comfortable thing. Okay, so let's go on from that. Your spine and posture. So as we've discovered already, your spine is designed to bear weight and transfer it down into the body. The bones get thicker as we travel down the spine for this exact reason, okay? The spine is also designed so that we can balance on 2 feet. So it needs to curve to balance our head over our ribs and our ribs over our hips. So it's designed to do that. So when someone says stand up straight, they mean bring your head into balance, which sounds a little less catchy and a little more mystical, but it's anatomically correct. Okay, so you now have a translator in your head, and when you hear someone say stand up straight, in your brain you go, okay, they want me to bring my head into balance over my body, my cervical spine is in between my ears, and the weight for my head's going to this point here, which is going down into my hips. So you're like Google Translate for anatomy, okay? Important to know is when we talk about the spine as a weight-bearing structure, it's good to know where the main weight-bearing points are in the body for your knowledge, okay? So the first one at the top there is where the head and the spine meet, and that's called the AO joint. It's a beautiful name, actually. It's the atlanto-occipital point, and it's to do with Atlas. So do you know the myth of Atlas? Who was it? Atlas he committed some sort of a crime, so he was doomed to hold up the sky for the rest of his life. Does anyone remember this myth? It's a lovely myth, but that's the name of the joint. It's Atlas. That's what holds the head up. I think it's really beautiful. So we've got that AO joint, that Atlas joint, this monster of a man holding up the entire sky. He sits at the top there. So that's the first point of balance over the body. So the first one you need to get right is that one. A lot of other things, I have to say, will fall into place if you can get that right. The second point of balance is the arm structure. So we got a lot of bones and a lot of weight hanging from our body with our arms here. And that's important that that balances over the body correctly as well. That's our second point of balance. The next point of balance is actually just kind of under the rib cage at the lumbar spine. So if our shoulders are out of whack, it's going to be hard for number 3 to be in alignment. When that is in alignment, it transfers the weight of everything above into this point here, which then sends it down into the hips. And you can see that's our number 4. The next point of balance after number 4 is the knees, and then the feet into the floor. Okay, so I'll just make sure that I have all of these here. Okay, so your hip joints, your knee joints, and your ankle joints. Now, the useful thing about this is we've gone from talking about things that have no sensory receptors to things that do have sensory receptors, because actually your joints are really rich in sensory receptors. If your knee hurts, you know about it. If your shoulder hurts, you know about it. If you got a pain in your back, in your mid-back, in your lower back, you know about it. If you got a pain in your neck, you know about it, because these are really key joints in the body, and they've got lots of sensory receptors. So this is fantastic. This means that when we're doing our preparation before we sing, if we roll up through the spine a number of times right from the ground, or if we do exercises where we play with moving our weight around. So let's say I'm standing now and I'm going to shift my weight to here. And then I'm going to shift my weight to the other side. And then I'm going to shift my weight forward and then back. That's involving a lot of the different main joint points to make that movement happen. And I can really get into it. I can be like, okay, I'm going to focus on how this feels in the ankle joint. I'm going to focus on how this feels in the knee joints. I'm going to focus on how this feels in the hip joints. So by moving your body out of balance, you can sense that moment when your body clicks back into balance. I'll give you an exercise now that you can do with the first joint at the top, the AO joint, and you'll feel this really powerfully. Now, you have to do this gently because, you know, as you can see, our head is designed to move here and here and up and down, okay? It's not designed to be in an extreme position like that for terribly long. But this is something that you're going to use gently to explore. So I'll demonstrate first. I'm going to lean my head right back, and then over a count of 10, I'm going to slowly bring it back up to the top. And I swear to God, you'll feel the point where your body goes, oh, thank God. You'll feel that joint come into alignment really powerfully this way. So the exercise is this. Your head goes back, And once it's back, we count for 10. So I'll do the 10 with a click because it's harder to speak in that position. So head's back. Here we go. Bring it up over 10. 1. Ooh. Sometimes when I do that, I find that I'm looking at the world from a more kingly place when I've finished. You can feel really, really clearly when the head comes into balance when you do that. So when you're doing yoga, when you're doing your Pilates, when you're doing, movements in the body to get yourself warmed up to sing, search for that point. We actually have sensory receptors here in these points. Actively move away from balance so that you can feel how your body goes when you slip back into it, okay? Those points of balance are so useful for you in your singing. They do so much for you. So here's a couple of examples of different types of posture. All right, A there, as you can see, the image is actually kind of slightly leaned back there on A, but if you were to flip him back so that he was in a proper position, A is ideal. So you can see that the weight of the head is transferring really cleanly into the hips. The weight from the hips is transferring into the knees. The knees are going into the ankles. If you look at B, you can see that the weight of the head is kind of leaning out from the body and that the cervical spine is really crunched. So that's the spine in the neck. It's really crunched down. That's not going to be great for your singing either because your spine is doing all this extra work. Your body's putting a lot of extra energy into the spine. You can see that C is almost trying to straighten out the spine. And that means that lumbar spine, the lower spine, isn't able to do its job correctly to get the weight into the knees. And you can see how the body tries to compensate. If you look at the bone that connects the hip to the knee, the femur, do you see how that's jutting out? And that's causing the knees to lock. That's an example C. That's a waste of your energy. It's a waste of your body's energy and resources. Your body's going to be putting its breath and its oxygen into that instead of into your singing, okay? And D is doing something similar. So you can see in D how the jutting out of the chin here is causing the femur to be like pushed out and the hips to be pushed out of alignment. So yeah, you can see that the lower part of the spine is trying to compensate, but it just doesn't work. It just doesn't really work. It's not the most efficient way to handle your equipment, okay? So how do we use this information? So there's so many exercises to find balance between these 6 points, but for now, if you can get your head balanced correctly on the top of your spine, that will release the muscles in your neck. And internally, we'll talk about the pharynx in a minute, but it will release the muscles in the pharynx. And that is going to help your singing no end, okay? If you can balance the weight of your head correctly over your hips, you will greatly aid your breathing and deliver the weight of your body into the floor. The reason it helps your breathing is because when we're in correct posture, our ribs can actually move freely. If we're not in the correct posture, our ribs can't move as freely in different areas. Then you can't take in a bigger breath. Then you can't hold a note for longer. You can't hold a phrase for longer. You won't have that capacity. So getting the head balanced over the hips is going to help there. Remember what we said, all of the points of balance are rich in sensory receptors. So experiment with different movements that help your body to feel released. And one more thing. This is you on your phone. This is me on my phone. I'm bad for this. The first example, the head is balanced over the spine. The weight of the head is 10 to 12 pounds. Okay? If you move the head just 15 degrees further down, your body is now trying to carry 27 pounds of weight. If you move your neck 30 degrees, it's 40 pounds. If you're right hunched over, it's 49 pounds. And if you're really hunched over and squinting into your phone, your body and your spine is now working as though it has 60 pounds of weight. So you have multiplied the amount of work your body is doing by 6 times if you are not in alignment. If you're someone who likes to avoid hard work, start learning how to get into alignment. It's going to help so many aspects of your singing. So many aspects of your singing. Okay. Are we okay so far? We're okay. 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 Okay, I'm going to assume we're ready. When I first started studying the vocal structures, I opened the book that I was using and I read 4 pages and I had to stop because I was like, I can't process this. This thing that she's saying is my voice box looks like an alien. I don't understand this. So this is by far the most complex part of the lecture today. I say that not to intimidate you, but to give you permission to feel like you're hearing a lot of information, okay? It's okay to feel like you're hearing a lot of information. You are about to hear a lot of information that's very different from what you have been taught before. So is there anyone here at the moment who actually knows and could draw on a piece of paper the structure of the larynx? The larynx is your voice box, by the way. If that's a no, it's fine. I mean, it was a solid no from me for quite a long time. Nope. Yeah, we got some no's coming in from the masses. I'm just going to grab this book. Whoa. Okay, so we're in it together, guys. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So just before we start, I'm just going to give you 1 or 2 definitions for usefulness. So cartilage, remember we talked about this earlier. Cartilage is kind of like bone, but it's spongier. It's got a little bit more elasticity. We're going to talk a bit about cartilage today. Because cartilage is kind of like bone, it can hold a shape. Like if you took a muscle out of the body and you slapped it down on a table, I mean, that would be gross, but it wouldn't have as much of a shape as a bone would, for example, or a piece of cartilage. So cartilage will hold a shape in quite a tough way. We're also going to talk about the vocal tract, okay? The vocal tract is from the space above your voice box or larynx. I'm going to refer to it as the larynx from now on because that's the anatomical word for the voice box. So the vocal tract is the space from the larynx to the lips. From the larynx to the lips. It's all of the space in between that. So if I talk about the vocal tract, or if you see teachers talk about the vocal tract, that's what you're hearing, okay? This is your pharynx. So the spaces that are highlighted in the colors, that's your pharynx or your kind of throat. The pharynx is the part of the throat behind the mouth and the nasal cavity and above the esophagus and the larynx. The esophagus is the bit where the food goes down, okay? So it's just the space. The pharynx is just a space. Now, as you can see from the pictures there, it doesn't include the mouth. It's just kind of this bit here, okay? You can divide that into 3 sections. Nasopharynx behind the nose, oropharynx behind the mouth, so that's like oral health, you know, going to the dentist, that kind of thing. And the laryngopharynx, because the word larynx, right? It's the space just above the larynx then, okay? The main thing you need to know about the pharynx for your singing is that for it to get out of your way and not be a problem to you, you need to have your head balanced over your spine. If the head is balancing over the spine correctly, if that AO joint we talked about is sitting nice and relaxed, your pharynx is going to be fine. Because the main thing we need from our pharynx in singing is for it to be relaxed. Okay? So just quickly to mention to you what effect that produces vocally when our pharynx is relaxed. When the pharynx is relaxed, the sound then bounces around in that hollow space. And that's what gives us really nice tone or resonance. So relaxing the pharynx is a matter of rolling up through the spine a couple of times. Or if you're looking at sheet music and you find yourself doing this, you know, maybe you just do a couple of neck rolls or something to get your body back into alignment. And that can open up your sound an awful lot, actually. So play with that. When you're singing something, try bringing your pharynx out of alignment. Try moving your head in different directions and see what it does to your voice. And see what happens when you place the spine, the head back over the spine where it should be. You'll feel the impact of your larynx then, okay? Now, the big guns, the larynx, the voice box, the source of our sound. Well, apart from the breath, this is kind of the next part of the journey to the voice. The larynx is attached to actually the bottom of our tongue. There's a tiny little bone called the hyoid bone. So do you see where the mouth is in this image? You see the big red thing in the mouth? That's your tongue, by the way. At the bottom of the tongue, and just kind of close to the neck, you'll see a little white bit there. That's called the hyoid bone. And the structures below that, you'll see another little line that is attaching to the hyoid bone with two lines. And then you see a series of little white bits under there. That's the larynx. Okay, this is a cutaway of the larynx. So you'll see something that isn't a cutaway shortly. It's at the base of the tongue. And the larynx is designed to sit on top of our windpipe to stop moisture and, well, to stop like water and food from going down into the windpipe. That's literally what it's designed to do, okay? Let's get stuck in. Here are the bones that are in the larynx. The larynx or voice box is made up of cartilage and muscle, okay? Cartilage is that thick stuff we talked about that's a bit elastic, and muscle is, well, you know what muscle is. This is a view of the cartilages from the side, okay? And do you see the bone that looks like it has the little bits pointing up? It's kind of this shape. This bit is towards the back of the body, okay? So if this was that bone for me, this is sitting here in my body. The kind of processes or the bits that go up are towards the back, okay? That little guy, this one, the one that looks like this, that has the bit sticking up, that's called your thyroid cartilage. And if you're a person who has an Adam's apple, that's what that is. In kind of, for people who have Adam's apples, that cartilage is more pronounced. So for those of you who have an Adam's apple, you can actually feel where your voice box is just by feeling for your Adam's apple. For those of us who don't have Adam's apples, we'll need to hum a little bit and kind of very gently, maybe with the back of your fingers, just feel for where your larynx is. So if you want to just, everybody, very gently, using the back of your fingers, now you're not going to press in, you're just going to gently rest your fingers along here. And I just want you to hum on a siren. So, you'll feel it vibrate. And that's your voice box. So that little bit, that little guy is called the thyroid cartilage. From the front, it looks like this. It's like a little visor. I like to call it the Optimus Prime mask because it's like that robot in Transformers, or it almost looks like a face mask with antennas sticking out. So I want everybody now to just, wherever you are, just map this with me. So we're almost making a little tent, but the thumbs are up. Now, when you sing high, this tilts forward. So I want you to do this with me as well. So in the same way as we did this with the diaphragm, we're going to do this here. So, okay. That movement is part of what causes us to create a higher sound. And I'll get into that in a second. But that's the thyroid cartilage. Below that, you'll see something that looks like a big triangle underneath it in the diagram. This is called the cricoid cartilage. And the way to model this is if you tent your fingers together like this, and then you join them together in a circle, that's what your cricoid cartilage looks like, okay? And if you have, it's like a signet ring, you know those rings you see men wear sometimes? It's kind of like that. So you've got your thumbs together here, and as you can guess, this is where in the body the air would travel down through this circle, okay? So that's your cricoid cartilage. Now, if you hold that so that your thumbs are kind of towards the direction of the floor, this is as though you're looking down someone's throat. So it's like you've told someone to say, ah, and you're looking down into their throat, like at the doctor's office. That's your cricoid cartilage. And when you sing high, this bit of it tips upwards. So can you all map that with me as well? So we've got our little signet ring shape, and we're going. Okay. I'll just skip to the next slide so you can see how this is working. So do you see? You can see the thyroid cartilage sitting on the top. On the bottom, you can see the cricoid cartilage, and you see those little lines are showing where the muscles are. So you can see there's a dotted outline of the thyroid cartilage. That's where the lower sound is. And the fully drawn in line is that action is. Okay, so it's a muscle on the bottom that connects the thin part of the thyroid cartilage to the thyroid, the thin part of the cricoid cartilage is connected to the bottom part of our optimus prime mask here. And when that muscle goes, that's when our vocal folds are going to get longer and thinner, okay? One last cartilage I want to introduce you to, and I'll go back to the last slide. So I want you to look now at you see the way on the image on the right, they've spread the bones out, the cartilage and the bone out a little bit more from before. I just want you to look there. Just to the left of that image, you'll see that there's another little triangular shape, small little triangular shape. That's called the arytenoid cartilage, okay? And I want you to get your hands and make a shape like this for both, okay? Those are your little arytenoid cartilages. And I'll show you where they sit. So we talked about our cricoid cartilage, that's this guy. The arytenoid sits just here on the top, okay? It sits on top of the cricoid cartilage. And if you look just to the left in this image, you can see a shadowy version of that little triangle sitting on top of the peak of that little signet ring, okay? The arytenoid cartilages are super important because, let's say this is one of them. This is one of the triangular guys. There's a muscle that runs from the end of this to the front of the optimus prime mask. So let's say here. Let's say this is the like the optimus prime mask has our little, the top of the triangle of the optimus prime mask, like in here maybe. This little triangular friend attaches to the inside the optimus prime mask. So if we've got a piece of muscle connecting this, let's say this is the inside of the optimus prime mask, just so we have a different reference. If my muscle starts here and runs to here, and then I tip this forward, it's making the muscle longer. Okay, now add into that the cricoid cartilage is rocking back and away. So we have this action happening. Okay, this is how we're creating different pitches in our voices, by coordinating the muscles that move this guy forward and that relax this guy back in, and the same of this here. So if we go back to our little arytenoid modeling here, I want to show you how this is going to work for you in your singing. So if I take a noisy breath This is the position that these are in. They're here. That's a noisy breath. A silent breath is here. So I am breathing as I'm doing that. It's just that the arytenoid guys have moved the two muscles out of each other's way, which means that they can't rub together and make sound for me. So this is no sound. If I bring them right together, la 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 la. What's happening in your body when you're generating sound is these little guys have come together. That means that the muscles, those long muscles we talked about, it means that they're now standing side by side. And if you push air through them, they vibrate. How many of you have tried that thing where you get a bit of grass and you put it in between your fingers here and you go to make a sound? You'll get a sound that sounds like a duck if you do that. And it's because you've created a little piece of pressure there that's now going to move. And it's the speed of that moving that creates the sound. This is how our reed instruments work in the orchestra. This is how a violin works. When we have a string, let's say this is the string of the violin and we have the bow and we rub them off each other, it causes the string to vibrate. And that's the sound that we hear. For our vocal folds and the muscles of our voice to vibrate, air passes up through them and the movement that results is our voice. Okay? That's a lot of information. I know that's a lot of information. And it's okay if this is your first time hearing a lot of these things. Terrifyingly, there is a lot more information to say, but I think that what we've just covered now is sufficient for you to understand lots of different things about your voice. This is a view from above, okay? And we'll look at actual pictures of actual larynxes in just a second. I think we're going to see some disgusted faces, but it's worth it to understand. This is a view of looking, this is like as though we were looking down into somebody's throat. The biggest shape that we can see, the one that looks like it's a U shape, that's our Optimus Prime mask. We know that when we go to make a higher sound, it's going to tilt forward. Okay. The next inner line that you can see is the cricoid cartilage. That's that signet ring that we talked about. And then you can see the things that look like they have almost little devil's horns on them. That's these guys. And one of the things that this image does really nicely is it shows us the line from the muscle here to where it attaches at the thyroid cartilage. So you can see from here really clearly how when that thyroid cartilage rocks forward and the arytenoids are coming back, it's going to make that string long. And if you get stuck and you don't know which is which sometimes, that's fine. You can always look it up. I like to remember how the guitar works. So the top string of your guitar is a thicker string. This string is a lot thicker than this one. So here's the thick string, a low sound. Here's the really, really thin string. Okay, it's the same in your voice. If your vocal folds are thick and short, they'll make a lower sound. If they're stretched long and thin, they'll make a higher sound. So I like to remember it that way. If you're a piano player, you can think about, you know, when you look inside the piano and you can see all the strings to the left of the piano will be really thick. And then the strings up at the top of the piano will be really thin to create low sounds and high sounds. We have evolved to have a moving mechanism in our body that can change the string. We can change the shape and the thickness of our string when we want to. It's freaking amazing. It's amazing. Our bodies are so incredible that we've evolved to be able to do this. So just to go through the text on this slide, this view shows the larynx from above. The label for the cricoid cartilage is towards the back of the body. and the point of the thyroid cartilage is towards the front. So we know that because we said it's like looking down into somebody else's throat. Here we can see the glottis and the vocal ligament. So when I say glottis, I mean, you know, when these guys spread apart from each other to give me that silent breath in, the space that they leave is called the glottis, okay? And that's got implications for other types of vocal exercises that we won't really get into today. We're going to talk about one more friend here, the epiglottis and the hyoid bone. So do you see the little word that says epiglottis and it's pointing to an arrow? The one that's on the left is how it would look if you were facing somebody, face to face. And then the one that's on the right is how it would look from the back. And you can see it's a leaf-shaped looking thing. So let's say this is a very bad representation of the voice box. When you drink something, it goes thunk. That little leaf shape, thunk. When you swallow food, it goes thunk. It closes. Why does it close? Because it doesn't want food or water getting into our lungs. This is why you need to stay hydrated all the time as a singer. Because if you have a drink of water on stage, it has to go through your whole digestive system before it can hydrate you. So your sip of water on stage is only going to really help you about an hour after you've drunk that, depending on how empty your belly is. So we need to stay hydrated all the time because thunk, it's not going to get down and actually hit your vocal cords. You have to hydrate your whole body for these muscles to get hydrated as well. It's kind of annoying, but that is how it is physiologically, okay? Looking at that little diagram there, apart from the little leaf-shaped guy that goes dunk, that's our epiglottis, you'll see there's a yellow bone there. That's called your hyoid bone. That's the one that connects to the bottom of the tongue. What you need to know about this muscle is that because it's connected to the tongue, it can pull up the whole voice structure. So do you see how it looks like there's almost cobwebs going from the hyoid bone up to the thyroid cartilage there? That'll pull it. So if I do this, the hyoid bone lurches forward and that pulls all of my larynx forward as well. That's setting you up for vocal strain. So if you see someone going for a high note like this, as they turn your dreams to shame, bad road. Because the hyoid bone is pulling up on my larynx now. That's uncomfortable. We need to tuck in. We need to get the head balanced over atlas. As they turn your dreams to shame. Much better. Okay. Then yeah, this isn't very pleasant, but this is a view from above of an actual larynx. So you can see what looks like a big lip on the bottom. That's the epiglottis. That's the thing that goes dunk. And you can see that V shape. That's where the two vocal ligaments are connecting to the thyroid cartilage. And the back is those guys that move like this. And you can actually see the little U lines of the trachea. So this is again as though we're looking into someone's mouth and straight down their body. And you can see that it's nice and open. So that's the glottis. That's the space between the vocal folds and the vocal ligament. Okay. That's another cross section there. That's the bit that goes dunk. That's the hyoid bone that can pull up on your larynx. This is like as though we've taken a knife and we've cut through the cricoid cartilage and the thyroid cartilage here. And then you can see the arytenoid cartilage happening there. Okay. So, and that's the tracheal cartilages. They're like there to maintain the shape of the trachea. So the trachea doesn't just collapse in on itself. Okay. There's another little video worth looking at. This is a view from the top. It's not exactly accurate all of the time, but it does show the movement of these different pieces of muscle, okay? So this is the thyroid cartilage here, this little V, and we can see it move the vocal folds. So that's a silent breath that we're seeing there. That's silent. This is going to be where you're making a sound. So you can see that the vocal folds aren't completely closed beside each other. That's a breathy sound. When we engage all of them, now the vocal folds are really coming together right the way down. That's like when you speak or when you sing. That's what's happening, ideally. That's a low sound. That's a slightly higher sound. A lower sound, a higher sound. So it's very interesting, this very complex piece of equipment. And there's more videos here. I will send this on to you guys if you want at the end of the presentation, so you can look at some of these things. Now, important to know about the larynx in singing. We have no sensory receptors in the larynx. Brilliant, great, wonderful. So this is why your vocal warm-ups and your breathing exercises and your alignment are so important, because you're not going to feel when you've pushed the larynx too hard. You're not going to feel, oh, maybe I'm pushing my larynx too hard. You're just going to have gone too far, okay? We need to remember that the vocal muscles are just that, they're muscles. If we push too much at them too quickly, we're going to injure ourselves. So if we go back to the analogy of being at the gym, so currently at the gym, I am not very strong. So I am lifting like the maximum is like 10 kilograms at the moment, okay? It's not very much. My friend Christina, who is a strength trainer, is currently lifting about 135 pounds and doing reps of 5. She is seriously strong. I might be able to do that someday if I keep at it, but it would be extremely foolish of me to jump straight in there and try and do it. If I went to try and lift what she's lifting, I could really injure myself. I could injure myself. Maybe I'd lift it, but maybe I wouldn't have the right technique to get it back down again. Maybe I could get a thumb fracture from trying to lift that because my body's not used to it. Muscles have to be built up over time, okay? So if you're just starting on your vocal journey, don't even think about whistle register. That's the Mariah Carey thing where she sounds like she's whistling. Do not even entertain the idea of growling or heavy vocal techniques. Your vocal cords may not be strong enough to withstand that without injury. This is why your first set is going to be 20 minutes long rather than 3 hours long. And if someone offers you a set for 3 hours, don't take it. Build up over time. These are muscles, and they are tiny muscles, and we don't have any sensory receptors. We're not going to feel when we've pushed them too far. The damage is just going to be done, okay? So we have to move progressively when it comes to our singing. Now, I want you to feel another movement of the larynx. So just gently place your fingers along your neck. And I want you to yawn. So give me a yawn. Okay. Now, what happens if you swallow? So swallow now. There are two different movements. So when you yawn, your larynx moves low into your throat. When you swallow, it moves up. So I just want you to do that again. So yawn. You feel that? You can feel the space in your throat. That's your yawn. Swallow. You can feel it go thunk. Okay? Knowing this range of motion is really important. So classical singers will always talk about the low larynx. You want to make a yawn as you sing. The reason is, if we can move the larynx just to a comfortably low position when we sing, we have more space in the pharynx, more space for the sound to resonate. That means a better tone for you. And it also means that the airflow is going to be really, it's going to feel a lot more relaxed. So important to note is that I'm just looking at the third bullet point of the slide now. In our coaching, we aim for a low and stable larynx. We don't want it to go as low as a yawn. That's an extremely low position. We don't want it to go as high as during a swallow, because swallowing is also an extreme position. But we just want it to sit down low in the body. So what I don't want for your larynx is this. Let's say this is your larynx. When you're singing, I don't want it to be like this all the time. Okay? That's going to make you sound like you have 6 different voices. Because when you think about it, part of the sound that you create when you sing tells the listener something about the space in your throat. And if my larynx moves around like very erratically and very wildly, I'm changing the space in my instrument all the time. So that's kind of like someone swapping between a guitar and a ukulele all the time. It's a different instrument. So that's not necessarily going to give you a consistent sound across your range. So it's useful to try and remember that relaxed low shape. And try and keep it relatively low, comfortably low, so that your body learns to bring the larynx into a position and not move too far away from that position, okay? This should never be painful. Another nice way to do it is to take in imagine you're breathing in cold air. So try that, breathe in cold air. Imagine there's cold air. Do you feel that space? Your larynx will naturally drop when you do that. So when I talked earlier about how we extend the ribcage and we keep it there, and we extend the diaphragm and we keep it there, that also should, in theory, in a lot of bodies, keep the larynx low. So you may have heard about this Italian technique called inhalare la voce, which is breathe in the voice. And the reason they're asking you to do that is because when you imagine that you're breathing in as you're singing, it's more likely that your larynx will find a comfortably low position to sing from, which means more resonance in your voice throughout your singing, okay? Finally, we're just going to look at the muscles that move the larynx up and down so that you understand what's happening, okay? I'm not going to go through these videos right now. You can look at them in your own time if you want to, that's no problem. Let's look at this first video here on the left, okay? We'll just see a little quick image. So this is called the thyrohyoid muscle because it connects the thyroid cartilage to the hyoid bone. And there you go. This is the one that we activate when we swallow. See the green bit? That's the bit that's going and contracting when you swallow. That moves the vocal folds up. So I want you to gently place your fingers here again, and I want you to swallow again so you can feel the action of those muscles. So swallow. That's those muscles engaging. Now, below there, you have the sternothyroid muscle. So that bone we felt earlier, this muscle connects that bone to the larynx. There, very different, longer, okay? To feel the motion of this muscle, if you know your collarbones, so if you move your fingers along your collarbones, you'll find that little nub where they kind of come together. If you gently place your finger inside that little hollow, or just above the kind of end of the collarbone, and you yawn, do you feel how that pushes against your fingers a little bit? Try it again if it didn't work the first time, and make sure your head is in balance over your body. Those are the muscles that are bringing the larynx down. Those are the ones I want you to remember. You don't need to remember their name, but I want you to visualize them, because I've heard a lot of vocal coaches say if you push your tongue back in your throat, that's a good way to lower the larynx. But that's not engaging the muscles correctly. That's forcing your larynx down. So remember, we talked about this, how the hyoid bone can pull the larynx up. That's pushing it down. We'd much rather these muscles be strong. Okay, that's how we lower the larynx and keep it stable for our singing. So if you're encountering some troubleshooting, let's just head it off. I want to remind you that the larynx is tiny. Your larynx, all of these structures we've just talked about, are the size of a walnut. It's very small, it's like that size. It's tiny, okay? Your vocal folds are tiny. strain or overuse through talking, and I wager a lot of you will do a lot more vocal damage talking after the gig than you will during the gig, or talking before the gig than you will during the gig. So be really mindful of your speech, because that's probably going to lead you to problems. So for example, let's say you have 5 days a week of gigging, okay? If you go and you have a load of drinks after your gig and you get very excited and you're like, ah, talking to everybody, that's more likely to screw up the next 4 nights of your gigging schedule than your singing. So we need to be okay with not being the one who's shouting the loudest, with people sometimes not hearing us, because the way we speak has a big effect on how our vocal cords work. I do have information about nodules for you linked here. I'm not going to go through it right now. And some images of nodules and what they look like, because I would like you to be scared of them. I'm not going to lie. I want you all to have a regular, consistent way that you engage with these muscles so that you don't get to the stage where you're straining them. Because if you think about it, if I was to take one of the strings on my guitar and I was to cut it, and I stitched it back together, or I got really strong super glue, maybe the string would work again, but it wouldn't sound the same. And it wouldn't be able to stretch the same way anymore. If you get to the stage where your voice is so damaged that you need vocal surgery, you will not have the same instrument that you had before. And you might not be able to bring your vocal folds together anymore, depending on how it heals. The doctors don't control how your body heals itself. They don't have control over that. So focusing on building up the muscles correctly and slowly over time is what you want. Don't go into singing operas if you haven't first sung a couple of light arias. Like, there's a reason that vocal coaches withhold certain songs for later and introduce certain songs earlier. It's to make sure that your equipment is athletic enough to handle the next step. Okay, it's for your safety. So, quick recap. We've looked at the lungs, the diaphragm, and the rib cage. We've looked at the larynx and the pharynx. We've looked at points of balance in the body. And I know some of you might have to go now, but I am really open to taking questions for a little bit. So does anybody have any questions on anything I've talked about today? Or would you like some information on how some of this is feeding into any sounds that you're getting in your own voice or in your own vocal practice? You can also come you can switch on your microphone if you want to just address me that way, but you're also welcome to type. Okay, everyone is terrified into silence. You poor creatures, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I want you to have this information. It's really important. Okay, if there aren't any further questions, then I'm happy to draw this session to a close. And I'm really grateful to you guys for choosing to spend your time today learning about your voices. I think that this kind of information really will help you to manage what you might get told by a vocal coach who has a different approach. You know, like they might say, do this or do that, and you might have knowledge where you can say, oh, actually, I'm doing it in this way, or yeah, maybe I should fix that. You know, that you can bring extra wisdom and knowledge to instructions that you're being given. Or you can maybe bring this into your troubleshooting, you know, like, oh, I'm sounding really hoarse, I'm sounding really strained. Why is that? Well, I sang this song in this particular way and I could feel strain here. So maybe I'm going to practice in front of a mirror to check that my head's in balance or any of those things. So yeah, I think that might be it. Guys, I wish you all the best with your voices, and thank you so much. I'm really glad the information felt helpful to you and felt interesting to you. Feel free, just keep it somewhere on your computer where you can see it, or where you can find it again if you need to. Believe me, this information takes a while to settle, and it's only kind of second nature to me now because I have been teaching it for about 2 years. So it's it'll take time to settle, but that doesn't mean you don't have it. You know what I mean? It just takes a bit of time. So thank you everyone so much. Thank you to the festival. Thank you, Gabrielis, for your work. And I hope to see you all again next year.